So welcome everyone to our final pandemic lecture series. This is number 4 in the First Responders Then and Now. We're delighted to have tonight with us 2 people from the Refugee and Immigrant Support Services of Emmaus, based in Albany for the last 13 years. We have the Executive Director, Rifat Filkins, and Operations Director, Francis Sangabo. So this, as I say, is a series that was about the pandemic and first responders then, back in the day, with the Spanish flu and the 1845 Irish famine immigrants, but also now. And so the centre, the RISSE Centre, is perfectly placed to tell us about how immigrants and refugees are coping. And we want to thank particularly Humanities New York for their sponsorship of this series, which is partially sponsored, of course, by the National Endowment for Humanities. So thank you very much, everyone, and welcome. Rifat, I think you'll speak first. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So today we are going to talk about all the challenges that refugees go through, and I feel very honored and privileged to represent RISE over here, where we are serving refugee families from 30 different countries. And I'm also very honored to have our operations director with me, who came to US as a refugee from Rwanda and spent quite a bit of years in refugee camp. Now he's a citizen and his family is citizen. But so today you would have opportunity to hear first-hand experience of him, coming to United States and what challenges he went through. And before we get to that, I would like to talk a little bit about RISE. So RISE stands for Refugee and Immigrant Support Services. And so I can't hear.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I turned on the thing. I'm wondering if the on or off button is on. Sorry.
So this is, it's working. So
I'm just going to turn on this light behind you. It might be better if you stand at this. Yeah. Just for the camera, if you stood at that podium, they'll see you better.
Oh, thanks. Is this better?
Yeah.
So as far as history of RISE, RISE started in 2007, and it started from the families which came from Rwanda, and actually Francis' family was part of those families. And at that time it started as church ministry, and Francis Sangabo was part of that family that just got here through USCRI. USCRI is Resettlement Agency, but then they're always looking for volunteers who could help families to find apartments, to set up their apartments and stuff. And at that time, some of the people from church wanted to help and volunteer, and that's how it started. I joined, and it started as a small after-school program. I came on H-1B visa in 2009, and I started at that time as education director. And at that time, after-school program, grew bigger. In 2011, we started ESL classes, and the reason we started because we were helping for a couple of years children, and we figured that children learn the language quick and they adapt quickly, but on the other hand, for adults it was like a real big struggle. So to help them out, we started adult ESL classes. We got our 501c3 because we started as church program, but in 2012 we got our 501c3, and then we continue supporting our families. So typically people, when it comes to refugees or immigrants, because the organization is more like serving both communities, there's always question like, what is the difference? So basically, refugee is a person who has to flee their country for some kind of, specific reason, which could be political, religious, or any kind of reason that they don't feel safe, and then they had to flee from their country and resettle somewhere else. And in most cases, they don't have any choice to go back unless they have the situation or circumstances in back home change. On the other hand, immigrants are the people who choose to leave their country. And it's their choice. They could go back whenever they want. And then our asylum seeker are the people who fled from their country due to fear of persecution and has applied for protection in another country but has not yet had their claim for protection assessed. And in most cases, when it comes to asylum seekers, they are already in some other country and then they apply for this status. And then there are internally displaced person, a person who is living inside the borders of his or her own country but is unable to safely live in his or her own home or region. And then there are stateless people. So this is all, you could find all of those things, And then, these are all the differences that is a difference between refugee and immigrant. Basically, I have already talked about it, that refugees don't have choice. On the other hand, immigrants have choice. Refugees can't go back, immigrants can go back. So because of those typical reasons, what happens that immigrants typically have more choices. They come from backgrounds where they have, financially they are stable, or education-wise they have better opportunities, because they were in a position that they could make a decision to move from one spot to the other. So basically that, I'm gonna get to the challenges. So this is the process a refugee follows for getting to the U.S. And as I said, Francis has his first-hand experience, so I would like him to come and talk about that.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about, the steps of refugees to get into the country that received them. Generally, when internally displaced person, they cross the border, they become stateless. So they don't have any country. So they belong to United Nations. That's where United Nations start to help them to be in refugee camp. So in refugee camps, generally, people, they move to their country to go to a refugee camp. It depends where that country is located. Let's say the country is located in Asia, which means the neighborhood countries. They are poor, they cannot support refugees. Let's say maybe in Syria, when they went to West Europe, there is a possibility they can get your help. But again, you see what happened. If it's in Africa, the neighborhood countries, they are poor. They cannot support them. That's where United Nations has three options. One is to go back in the country, so where they left, which means their political environment should be stable. Generally is not. Second is to be integrated in the community where they are. Generally, those countries, they don't like refugees because of, there's many reasons. There's a political that they're fearing that maybe this population will be grow and they can take over the political issues, activities. And that would cause some region cause the war, like in Ivory Coast. I know that the president the parents were refugees in Ivory Coast from Burkina Faso. Their son or child went to school up to be, PhD holder and become a prime minister of the country. Now, he wants to be president. People say, no, you are not citizen. Because he has a big group behind him, they started to fight for 11 years. So that's why people, they don't have. The other option is resettlement, to be resettled to another country. So that option is 0%. I was reading it's around 10%, even under 10%. Because like refugee camp I was in Tanzania, we were around 400,000. All of them, they cannot get. Now, to be selected, that's another big problem. So, in refugee camp, they have 3 steps. One is emergency, to assist the people who are there immediately, because generally they go to abandoned buildings, in schools, in bush, now to make a stable refugee camp. Other one is to recognize the status, to be registered and to be in UNHCR, United Nations High Commission, in database, and they go to solution. So this solution is the resettlement. So first of all, there is agency whose generally those agencies are international levels like Oxfam, Red Cross, IRC, and those agencies, they are there to help to give emergency assistance like water, medical, food, something like that, shelter, and then those agencies, they refer refugees to UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees. So this, in order to select people, you have to show genuine reasons that you cannot go back in country. Generally, there is 4 scenarios. One is people who have a political issue, they cannot go back in country, they can be persecuted. Second are the people who are social vulnerable. Let's say women who are left in refugee camps, they cannot go back because the community will reject them. Then we have people who are sick because of whatever happened to them. Also we have unaccompanied children who don't have parents. And also the fourth one is people who do not know where they come from. Let's say your parents may be coming from Rwanda, for example. You go in Tanzania, you spend there 20 years. My children who were born in Congo, because they never get citizenship for Congo, now when they go back, where? They don't know. Those are the people who, those 4 categories UNHCR tried to help. So, to identify now, it's big problem, because you need to know your date of birth, where you were born, those, your complete identity. That's how you find out majority of people who are refugees, they come with the date of birth January 1st and the year. Majority of them, because that's the day they cannot forget. Second is to know the date of birth of children. It's hard because some countries until now they don't have the process of database for demographical to identify the identity. Now after that, they do initial assessment. Initial assessment, it goes to the head office called Protection Office. this is a person who they can tell the story, and after that, it's up to protection officer who can decide you can go back or you cannot go back. You can stay. And after that, they go to, that's where they do their identity, and after that, they submit to correct identity and biometric, those fingerprint, those biography, and after that, they go to UN Referral Refugee. This is where that when they collect data, they will submit the data to UN Referral. This office called they called resettlement officer. That's the officer who will treat information to see if these people are eligible. Because to the second step, now from referral they have to send it to the government. So there is generally those developed countries, like you have Australia, we have the US, you have Canada, we have Scandinavian countries, like Norway, Denmark, Finland, those. But generally those from Central Europe, like France, Belgium, UK, they don't take refugees at all, because they are in French called metropole. They colonize the Africa or Asia. So now those people who had money when there's a war, they flew over there with them because they have money. So because they have a lot of refugees. That's why you hear that in Germany, there are tons of thousands of Syrians or Iraqis or something like that. So now when they submit to the government select what they can accept. Each country has their own criteria. What I know is that, like Canada, they take people who have political issues and people who are sick, vulnerable. Australia doesn't take anybody who is sick, anybody who is old, they don't take them. They take young people, and those are people able to work. Recently they had a problem because they cannot accept even somebody who was affected by HIV. They can't. Those Scandinavian countries, Norway and the countries, for them, they like to take unaccompanied children, wives, and the political issues, political cases. US take everybody who is eligible. It doesn't matter sick or whatever the circumstances are. So now, at this level, the country will send, they have immigration officer. Here is State Department, there is Refugee Department. They have people who have experience to collect those information for refugees. So they do assessment. So up to this level, refugees, they never met the country where they will go. They don't know anything. Today's High Commission, they say that, refugees, they apply. Generally, they don't apply because when they can apply. So for this, when the government examine, they check every single aspect, criminal aspect, human trafficking aspect, those kind of background which can cause a problem because the US doesn't like to receive people who has a criminal background. They check all those. So there is 17 steps where a refugee has to go through. But for Syrians, particularly, they have double check here. When they are in refugee camp and when they get here, they go through the same screening. And this screening it goes to from FBI background check. You know more than me. Those officers that is a good background check. So you can see those. That was the face-to-face, the first interview. This interview for the government, UNHCR is generous to give you date of birth, January 1st. But for them, if you miss the date of birth, even for your child, you are rejected. So they tell you to memorize. We had one refugee from Afghanistan, where for them, I think the ladies, they have only the one name. Now, the second, she said, I don't have the second name. You understand again? Unknown. So now she came here. The last name is U-N. Yeah, something like that. F-U-N. First name unknown.
And they give you your first name as
Yes, so something like that.
So,
So,
can I ask you, are they in the camp still for all of
yes,
this?
oh, this is the
Yeah.
camp.
Okay.
So, and again, they go to those biometric again. Actually, the previous experience I was telling you is done by agencies like IRC, like Red Cross, like I think US has only IRC now who's doing that in refugee camp, on refugee camp level. So now go to the fingerprint, to see if it's matching with the corrections they get. They go to medical checkup. Again, that's an issue. If they found out that you have any kind of sick, which is, let's say, TB, HIV, or it's more timing because they have to check and check. And when you go to, you see the face-to-face interview, they will tell you, please do not get married because it will change your status. Do not get a baby because it will change your status. Because they cannot say do not die. But they say in case someone dies in your family, you have to give information. Otherwise, you will lose. There are people who spend 20 years in the fire. When is the time to come, they have a baby. When is the time, one gets married? When is the time one family dies? So it's very complicated. Generally, this interview, to me, I got an interview in 2006 in February, and in March 2007 I was here. It was quick, which means that they didn't find anything in the family. However, I was rejected by Australia. And when they reject you, they don't give you a reason. You don't know.
And were you single parents or a family?
I was my family,
Oh,
my 2 children.
okay.
Yeah. So sometimes they have their own political view
Yeah.
because let's say they ask you about where is your mother. It's not like here that you say I don't know where is my mother. It's impossible. You cannot give such answer. It's very, very complicated, the question. They ask questions where you need really to be to understand. That's why majority of people who are not educated, it's hard to get in. So they get a medical checkup, you receive culture orientation, where they tell you where the country you are going. And when you come, you are in the US, you get a screening again. When you get here, You have medical assistance, school assistance, and the food. For 3 months, that's why they have, Rifat was talking about those agencies, the settlement agencies here in Albany. We have USCRI. They get you and they fund the apartment. You go there, they will pay rent, they enroll children in the school, they will help you to pay, to get into they have Medicaid. You don't have the card, but they have agreement with the government that you can go through the Medicaid. So now, after 3 months, generally they leave you alone. That's where RISSE come to intervene. So there is many challenges. That's where RISSE come to provide language instruction and the other support. I think you can
So as I said, this is a long PowerPoint, but I will try to just finish in 10-15 minutes, and we will talk more about challenges that refugee families face. So obviously, when the reasons that refugee families flee from their countries, those are the reasons that families were living in a situation where it was so dangerous for them to live over there. So all refugee families come, when they move from their country, they come with some kind of trauma. So and because we have been dealing with refugee families, we can see that a lot, and some kind of a sense of loss and sadness. Like each family would have stories where they lost their loved ones, or something terrible happened. And again, our experience with refugee families, we have a lot of examples. We have one of our women from Syria, and whenever she was in one of the rooms, she was just she was depressed and didn't want to be there. It was one of our classrooms. And somehow it was reminding her something bad happened to her brother back home, and that room reminded her of that. Children, because we have after school program, and we see a lot of children when they get off of the school bus, and we see like some kind of a anger, and it's all like what they have gone through. The trauma is at home. It's different atmosphere because adults are still so much attached to their culture, and then kids in school are like adapting to new cultures. It's such traumatic for them. So so what happens, like as I talk, some people lose their loved ones. Some people are missing. So in many families, because of that reason, older siblings, take the role of they become guardians, because and then especially when they move to another country, like over here, kids learn the language quickly. So everything, they kind of take control. There's forced adoption. We do have some cases, like kids go through that, unification with unfamiliar blood relatives. So obviously all these factors, when a child is developing, and even adults, we have so many adults who are going through depression. It's because, and it's the trauma that is causing all of that. So because this is such long journey, all the steps that Francis has explained before, it could take anywhere from 4 years to 20 years. So it depends your background. how much education you have, how well you can explain your situation, how well you can travel to go from one spot to the other spot. So there are many factors that play their role. So many of them they don't have education, or they have interrupted education, because we have children from Syria, and obviously all of the children, the research shows that most of the children, refugee children, when they come over here, they have some kind of deficiency, learning deficiency, because of their trauma and the situations they go through. So, but personal experiences that we have Syrian children. For them, it was just hard to understand why they have to follow rules, why a teacher cannot let them go wherever they want, because there are some regulations here we follow. Those kids never saw a school. They'd never been to a school. So these are the 3 stages of the refugee journey: leaving home, journey to the to the USA, and adjusting to life in the USA. So you can see like how all these things, 3 steps, can be stressful for refugee families. And as Francis said, when it comes to resettlement agencies, now you saw how long is the journey and how it varies from family to family. But when they get resettled, the expectation is that in 3 months they should be able to just be on their own, find a job, and do everything on their own, which is very unrealistic expectation. That's where RISE comes in. And at RISE, these are the services we provide. We have adult ESL classes. We started adult ESL classes in 2011. We have ESL after school program, which is a licensed program. We have capacity to serve 100 children, where we provide homework assistance, we provide hot meal, healthy snack, and basically a safe place where kids can find kids around them who have the same needs, because in school they're frustrated, they basically sit and they don't do anything because of the language barrier, because when they come, most of our kids are behind, because when they come to the United States, they're not sent in a grade based on the level of like what level they are, but based on their age. So a 7th grader can go in 7th grade but don't know any English, and should start from the letters, but what happens, those kids get the same homework which other kids are getting. So how frustrating that could be. So, and on top of that, if some teachers are really nice and they want to give them some extra work, that is like extra, because the kids in their brains, they are saying, well, this is homework, I gotta get it done. Again, with the Syrian girls, that was one of our staff has to leave because there was big struggle. He wanted to do the right thing, which is like, okay, you gotta learn the basics, and the girl was like, everybody gets their homework done. So this is what we want to do. Don't give us this work. They wanted to look like other children, which is such hard thing for them. So we do have summer programs too, both for youth and for adults. We have obviously playtime is very important. So and especially these days, and we spend a lot. Our youth is spending a lot of time outside. Other assistance we provide is job search assistance, computer access, and assistance with finding childcare, for health care, basic life skill instructions. We did have, not at this point, but we did have donation room where we would collect and people would come like clothes and shoes and household items, and people would come and get them. At this time, we are not doing it. And very importantly, provide transportation. Most of the families, when they come, they are living through basically, they don't have that much, and even if they find jobs, those are not great jobs. Those are like, jobs which pay very little. And so many of them, they don't have a means of transportation. So, and then many of them find it very difficult because, they're not used to they are used to like going somewhere and just seeing a bus and get on it and go wherever, but that's not how it works over here. Correspondence requirement, and then we also do a lot of basically many of the refugee families are on DSS benefits, so we help them when it's time for recertification, what they need to do, how they need to respond to the questions that DSS might have. So so the challenges that we have, obviously, there is so many things that we have to be mindful of, because people are coming from very, very particular situations. Something little can trigger something and can cause a lot of we have social emotional needs, which in some cultures there's no concept of social emotional needs, and here you come and you hear about it, and then you're trying to convince others that there's nothing like that. We have children who have social emotional needs and are on medicine, but many of them, they don't even take medicine because of the, in their culture it doesn't exist. Or even if it is, it's not considered right for that somebody should know about it. So language barrier is the biggest barrier. When people come over here, in all these years, what we have learned that language barrier is the biggest barrier. And because RISE's mission is to equip our families with the skills that can help them to have a sustainable life, so language is our top priority, because many of them, they don't even want to leave their homes because they are so much scared and reluctant to get out. For that reason, many of them, they find apartments where they could have people from their community so that they can communicate with them in their native language, which helps somehow, but in other ways, it doesn't give them opportunity to ever get out of their shell and feel comfortable. So many of the things which other people think that, oh, this is nothing, can be very fearful for these kids, like a dark corridor and some loud noise, or because those are the things that back home or during their journey were some of the things which they have faced. And so this is what we do from 10:30 to 6:45 is our day. That's what we do, and we do go through for a background check and all of that. So basically, I think what the PowerPoint is done, but I particularly wanna talk about how when refugee families come to this country, just imagine, and I think it's very easy for me as an immigrant. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I came as on H-1B visa, and then so I'm an immigrant and refugee. Francis has refugee status, so I think that helps us a lot to relate to our families. And I just cannot even, although I could relate some, but I feel like I could never put myself in refugee people's shoes, because I came with education, with everything, and it was my choice. And still, it is struggle, even now.
Yeah.
Even now, everything, where you might think, not even think once, I might have to think 10 times about that before I do it, or before I say it, or is it going to be right, or is it appropriate, or so I just can't imagine people who never went to school, how hard it could be to be on a place which is brand new for you, where everything is done differently, where you don't have people that you know, where you don't have people who look like you, It's such hard thing. And on top of that, now the pandemic situation, I'm going to relate to that. Now we have language problem. We have children taking taking a leading role in families. We have no transportation. We have children trauma, adults with trauma, social emotional needs, and on top of that, how pandemic added on all those issues. Language, I kept saying that language is the biggest barrier. And so now all these families seeing all kinds of information in English doesn't help them. Sometimes small things. In our staff meetings, sometimes we say, we switched our adult ESL classes to online classes when pandemic started, and we are having such hard time. We have 2 levels, level 1 and level 2. Getting level 1 students is struggle. We have tons of volunteers, our staff working hard, making videos. This is how you do it. Calling, sending every time they put a lesson, they send a text to each student. But nobody is attending them. And we all sit down and we say, it's just a click. But imagine somebody who doesn't know how to do it. And the difference is, in our level 2 are the people who are somewhat, they have some education, or they're literate in their native language. So that helps a lot. But then in level 1 are the people who never went to school. So in level 2, we have almost 40 students. And in level 1, we put double of the effort, and we have, I think, couple students, only maybe 2 or 3. And so, and if for any person, it's like, how come? But I think it's only people who go through those things can understand how hard it is. Same as with children. Now everything's switching on online and having choice to be online or to be in person. To our knowledge, many of the families they didn't do anything. They didn't make a choice. Now school puts them in person. We are being told they are in person. We arrange for them for after school program. They don't show up. Oh, what happened? We worked with transportation. What happened? Somebody called from school and asked, would you like to be online? And somebody in family who picked up the phone just said, okay. And that just changes the whole situation. And going back is again such big effort, especially when you don't know the language. Same thing I think with and again our people obviously lost many jobs. Many of them they lost jobs. But on the other hand, many of them kept their jobs because they were, they were on places where they were needed, like in stores, in restaurants, in hotels, where they're doing, those jobs which other people are not doing. So they are more at risk. And then they bring that risk back to their families. And then I think the other big factor is that many of the families, it's not like American families where you have small families. It's large families living in small apartments, and so the risk is more to get the virus. So, and when we hear that, you know, the pandemic is affecting people of color the most, you know, it just tells you what is going on. You know, there are more risks and there is less opportunity, you know, for the treatment. So, and all our families fall under that. So, you know, this is a struggle, but on the other hand, we feel like, you know, many people in the community are always supportive, so that helps. Again, cultural differences. You know, like we have cultures, we did the food program for summer, and we were going to deliver food to each house, because schools did the program, but they were on certain spots, and again, for not having transportation, our families didn't have access to those. So we did the food delivery program. So we would go and I would see people coming out of the house without mask. And we would say, okay, so, oh no, it's okay, you know, or people would come and, like for us, it was struggle in the beginning to convince people, you enter in the building, you must have masks, because having imagine 30 plus countries, and everybody coming from different culture, and being on one place, how difficult it could be. And again, it comes to like how much you can balance with the culture over here and the culture you're coming from. And that's where we are trying, we are doing our role to bring some kind of balance. You know, you're here on a new place, you have to learn new things, you have to adapt. To what level you can keep your culture. So it's challenging in itself, because there is not like a scale. This much we can keep, this much we can learn. So this is what I personally feel, and this is, we are talking about our personal experiences. Every day what we see in family, you know, every family has a story, every family has different problems that they bring up. And you know, it's, again, you know, refugees come already with a lot of challenges. And having pandemic on top of that is just, you know, adds up into their challenges. Thank you.
So do we have
Questions?
Yeah,
Any questions?
I don't know questions are coming.
What's the best thing that people can do to help?
What's
Like
the-
the best thing that people like us can do to help?
Well, the best thing people can do is, I think,
Give money?
to the organization, give
Yeah,
money,
yeah.
which is because, you know, that's how people are going to get services.
And where do you get
But
your,
I think-
where do you get your funding from?
We get funding for our adult program. We have a state aid grant. This is our 6th year. We got brand new contract. And then for youth program, we get some child care funding. We get individual donations. We get some support from Community Foundation, United Ways, and but like adult program, if the grant is there, but it doesn't cover everything, so there is always more need. We do little fundraisers here and there, so that's how it is. But if anyone wants to donate, there are multiple ways on our website that people could donate. They could write a check, they could pay it through PayPal, they can send through PayPal. So But for the families, I think that and the timing that we are living in right now, and Albany is pretty diverse place, which is a nice thing. I think for families, for refugees or immigrants, just for the community to give them chance to live like normal people, you know, they're people. Just treat them like people, so that nobody feels like, you know, I'm less than someone else. I think that's very important. And for children, you know, it is some cultures. Children are coming from like African culture, I'm sure, where the whole community takes. It's like the whole village is responsible to raise the child. You know, and over here, then children don't see it. It's like, oh, we are free, you know, and so it's very hard. On the other hand, you know, for parents too. Okay, you know, it's all me. So how we can balance that? I am glad that many people they go far and beyond to support, to provide support to these families, but we need more. We need more people like that. We need more hands. When we sit in our adult ESL classes, we say, level 1, we are not getting students because they need a hand, you know? They need a hand, the hand that can click for them. And that's going to help them to get to the next step. Maybe there would be time that they would be able to do on their own, but they are at the stage. So there are stages in people's life. And I think we do have a lot of families who are at the stage where they need a lot of help. And education, these people came for education. They put their lives in danger because they wanted good education for their children. And if that goal is not met, that would be a sad thing for families. So I think education is the key, that these families are going to transform their families. So, you know, anything that can help to educate them is going to help. And again, to educate them, we do have services. Please help, support, you know, give money, support.
And also we do have program called RISSE Family
Helpers.
So where as a volunteer can come and choose a family and you know, help them to navigate the whole life. You know, I came with some.
Kind of program?
Yes.
You
Yes.
kind of adopted them. Oh, nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can be enrolled and you can, if you go on our website, you will be able to contact
Okay.
our volunteer coordinator can help you. However, you know, there is many risks they are running refugees because of the challenges they're in. One of them is, the biggest one is, you know, as Rifat said, many people that live in one house. It's hard to keep social distances, and it is hard to control the kids who are going out or someone who's working. The other one is the neighborhood they live in. You know, as you know, the neighborhoods, because they don't go to those nice neighborhoods. Last time I went in Saratoga to do presentation, I was showing, you know, how they scattered in New York State. No one refugee who is in Saratoga County. No.
No?
They asked me why. I said, ask yourself why.
Yeah, yeah. Who pays the cost?
Yeah, because generally when they settle refugees, they put them in city where they can get, can hear me. Where they can get easily to the store,
Yeah.
they can get to hospital, they can go to school where is the ESL program. That's why those accounts they don't go. Another issue is that lack of personal transportation, if I already said, you know, they use the public transportation, which puts them on more risk. Another one is you know, some of them, they don't have television. Even there is a barrier of language, but they don't have a television. At home they can see those information they're giving you on the television. Another one, they're not integrated well in the community because you can imagine, for example, person who gets here and immediately after 3 months get a job, he doesn't even get out to talk to other people. Again, a language barrier. Another point is where they work. I was reading news. Times Union journalist went to visit one of the family. The lady was sick, but continued to go to work because she doesn't know even how to communicate in order to say, I'm sick. She's scared that if you say that she's sick, they say, oh, corona?
Right.
Now, she don't think that there is even a benefit if you have affected by corona. Not having sick leave. They may have, but they don't know. Yesterday, the family, single mother who came to me say she need vacation for 1 week. I think she has something to do with, as the manager told me, no. She doesn't have that benefit. Mental health issue. So they're already sick. Now they have then this environment where they can be infected. What do you think? Those who are already mental health, we have many of them. You know, those are conditions they live, but I think there's many ways to help. If you contact RISSE, you can go through, not, yes, financial is good, but also to see them, you can have idea how they live. Thank you.
And we do have a lot of online opportunities. Our adult ESL classes, for adult ESL classes, we have Zoom classes, we have, you know, on phone, you could, because we have Google classes, so, you know, people could just connect with the family or a student and help them, you know, get the work done and that kind of thing, which can be a big help to students, and not only for them to learn English, which is very important, but also sometimes their learning and their work is linked to their benefits. So if they're not doing that, that affects their benefits. So if we have people who can kind of, you know, help them to be engaged, that's really nice for the whole family.
I was going to ask you, I mean, there's so much to unpack, and particularly, you know, here in the Irish Museum, it was reminding me about the famine era, and they come in, some of them speak Irish, they're totally traumatized because of 4 years of hunger in their country and, you know, evictions. But one of the slides said, and we don't want to get too political, but it said, you know, the worst trauma for children is actually separating them from the parents, not to go through war. And so, you know, has lately policies, you know, impacted your families more than maybe 10 years ago, or, you know, that kind of thing? Like it's
definitely, especially, you know, with the right after the last elections, we would have families who would come and say, are we going to be okay? Are we going to send back, you know? Or Regina would come, she works in our kitchen and cooks food for children. She would come and say, oh, I still have my brother back in refugee camp. Is he gonna ever be able to make it over here? And people, like, sometimes there were you know, some jokes around, and which is like people are packing up and going back. our people were taking them like literally.
Yeah.
They were scared, you know. And and that's a joke. What was the name of the kid from Nepal? The little one. So I always laugh about that kids were like so much. They were making jokes around that, like kids would be playing together, and he would come and he would say Trump, and all the kids would run on like all different ways, because you know that means that they're not safe,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And that's a big message.
Yeah.
They were playing, but
Yeah.
that's a big message.
Yeah.
And then I think like literally right now we heard that in the history for the first time the cap is like down to 15,000 for next year,
Yeah.
which is like when families hear about that,
Yeah.
and that's a disappointment for families. And sometimes I also feel like we do hear a lot about refugees and we have a lot of information, but even for people like me, for immigrants, you know, I have been here for 11 years now. I came in 2009, and since then, I have daughter 6 years old, and she always says, "Mom, why it's always we have to go and visit? Why no one can come?" Because we have large family back home, and you know anything. There are always things. There's wedding. There's somebody sick. There is some mishap happens. There's always something happening, and it's a very general question, but our immigration system is so broken, and and interesting thing is, all our politicians, they talk about families. They talk about families, but nobody thinks about the families who are not together, or who are not from here. You know, we do have families, but why we have to be all the time 1,000 miles apart? Nobody can visit. You wouldn't believe my father and mother came. Apparently, elderly people can get visa for some reason. I don't know why is that. No young people can get visa.
So they have to get just on vacation, even they have to get a visa?
Yeah.
Wow.
So my parents got in 2015, no 13, I believe 13, and my father got sick, so sick, and I was 7 months. As soon as they came, we traveled with them, brought them. My husband and I, we went and got them. Then when we came over here, I was pregnant, and then my father got sick, and he was sick enough that he couldn't walk. He always needed somebody to help. And in St. Peter, most of the time he was in hospital. St. Peter's Hospital, doctors wrote letters saying that to go back, he needs help. I was not going to just put him on the plane in that condition. My brother applied, nope, he couldn't get visa. To come get his sick father to bring him back home. And so I ended up counting, because after 7 months, you know, there's some certain restriction if you're 7 months pregnant. Counting a week before 7 months, I flew there, brought them back, went there for a week, which is such long, flight and everything. So you just think what they were gonna do if somebody comes and does something for their family. What is wrong with that? But apparently, for education, my niece and nephew has applied. They got the admission and everything. They couldn't get the visa. No. Schools provided scholarship. Everything was okay, but no visa. So I think there's just like double standards. When it comes to politics, there are double standards. If families are important for American people, they're as important for Congolese, for Pakistani people, for people from Rwanda, from Syria, from everywhere. Families are important, and families should be able to be together.
Well, 'cause I think the slide said that something like 1% of people are accepted, from the UN to the US, and as you say now, the number is being reduced to 15,000 from 100,000. It's still tiny numbers before, but 15,000 is, less than the size of a town.
Yeah.
It's a less number in 50 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
And, we didn't kind of cover that, but it must be difficult, particularly, in your situation, Francis, with Rwanda, like sometimes you're fleeing out the door, like you don't have the passport and the birth certificate, and, if you're sometimes like fleeing a bloody conflict, you don't have the paperwork.
Oh no, yeah,
So
in
you
many
walk up
cases.
to the camp, and how can you say, like, I'm me, I'm not the other side, But it
In
must
many
be difficult.
cases, people they don't have passport or any kind of documentation because,
Maybe they never
like
had it,
me, I was born in the west of Rwanda, but I was working in the east.
Okay,
So my parents went in the west in Congo.
yeah.
I went in the east in Tanzania. I never met them again. Yeah,
So when did that happen?
in
Yeah.
1994.
And
Yeah.
do you know anything about them,
Yeah, I knew better, but when actually they were killed in 1998, but I knew in 2001. Yeah.
And so as you say, this, to live with that trauma, aside from this is a different culture and it's a different world, and even as immigrants, I'm an immigrant, and from Ireland it's very similar, but of course you're missing home, you're missing familiar food, familiar smells. So to come with that kind of trauma is absolutely incredible,
So let me tell you, maybe now it's time to go down,
Yeah.
but I never passed any night without dreaming maybe I'm on a broke down on where there is a barrier, maybe soldiers are asking me a question because that's what I saw.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone has a gun after me, something like that. Now it's going little down.
Yeah.
Maybe because of my age, I'm maybe I'm
Time,
thinking
time,
something.
time heals,
It's trying to
you know.
with those here, but it's very, very.
Yeah, but it's more complicated, and it is when to explain to this I tell people when I was on the PowerPoint. There's a PowerPoint, there is some videos. I don't know why I want to show. They say, Francis, don't to show us those. Because there's a little situation in refugee camp. Hospitals, they don't have anything. They're starving. But, that's really life, how they are. But
Yeah,
And I
we are
think
talking
that's
about
important.
time heals. Sorry to interrupt you, but we are talking about time heals. He's talking about 1994, and we are talking in 2020 when he's getting a little bit better on that. And he developed family after that. He has 3 children who have needs. He is busy with that. He is engaged at work and everything, and still it's taking him so long.
So that's how important it is that your new life is stable, so that it will give you time and the emotional support. So if your families that are worried about their work and maybe they're a chambermaid and all of these problems with pandemic, and they're still trying to cope with recent trauma, it's very, very difficult. Yeah.
for the pandemic, we have a family from Africa. This lady, she took care of her nephew when he was 3 months. She lived with her own children, but they never told this child that it was not a biological mother.
Okay.
But because of resettlement to come here, they have to do, biometric. The aunt has to say, it's not my son. They got here, you know, how it is. They separate the child to the aunt and they ask some questions. That was the son, how old is he now? 13.
Freddie?
Yes,
Yes,
13. They had him for 4 years. He was 11. That way discovered that is not a biological mother. It was devastating. You know, they called him, I told them, they said you should not ask such a question. But I think that it's illegal, they should ask. That's how it is.
And that's the cultural thing too. Like in my country too, people adopt, and you know how in America it's like, okay, I
Your father is
adopted
there.
this child, and it's very common and
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
But in my country, it doesn't happen like
Yeah.
that. You adopt, you never talk about it.
Yeah.
And the minute you talk about it,
Yeah.
it becomes a big conflict.
Yeah.
Even the siblings, they didn't know.
No, yeah. Ireland was
Until-
like that 40 or 50 years ago, you know. Yeah.
Until it happened. Now, last week, the aunt called me and said, you know, because that child, since he knew that, he started to observe differently. Whenever they do something, he says, oh, because, what is this? Because, you know,
Yeah.
aunt try her best to do.
Yeah.
But last week she called me, she said, if you can help me, maybe somebody else can adopt the child. Because he was in the park, 10 p.m. the police went to pick him up. Because he was not aware.
Yeah.
Now he said, oh, you are doing this because you are not my mom. Something like that.
Yeah.
So
And it's hard for children to understand, but basically it is trauma.
It is, yeah. Well, because in a way the life you were living is sort of not true, you know, even though she loves him and keeps
Yeah.
seeing it as not true. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much. This was, I have to say, inspirational, you know, really, and
Yeah.
difficult and all has, you know, the pandemic has been for the museum, you know, of course, with these real human beings, you know, and that's why I'm so glad we did this series, because Irish America, a lot of it traces their roots, you know, to the famine. And so, you know, I hope tomorrow when people watch the video and more people see this, that this is exactly our story, it's just 150 years later. And
Correct.
so this was how Irish people came from Kerry, you know, got on ships, coffin ships, so many people died, you know. They were
Yeah.
starving for 3 or 4 years, they land in a port where they don't know anything, they may not speak English. And, you know, we celebrate those people today because they survived, even though the average surviving was 7 years.
yes.
They were so bad, you know. And so we have to see that it's the same thing that's happening to just people from different countries today, but it's exactly the same story, you know. So I hope that we can, you know, do some work with you in the future.
Oh, sure.
And thank you both for coming. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we're so sorry you were late.
Not at all.
The educator told that here, why we are on the break here.
Yeah.
So now it's like